the COVID for working kennels, it was a funny time. I mean, I think from what I gather, every country was different. And France basically was just copying its neighbors. And they basically went into lockdown, i.e. nobody can leave their house during the day, blah, blah, blah. So in France, especially in the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, somebody released figures the other day of 7,000 so-called breeders. There are only 1,000 official, 1,000 with a sort of kennel name and officially declared. So if you like, 6,000 breeders weren't allowed to leave the house. So that kind of made it strange. And then the 1,000 professional breeders that existed in just Staffordshire Bull Terriers, you were allowed to basically come and go as you pleased. So it didn't really affect me that much, as in, if I had pups to go, I could deliver anywhere in France. And in fact, it was almost like the Will Smith film, I Am Legend. I mean, it was just dead. There was nobody about, nobody on the roads. If ever you went through a toll booth, you'd have police on the toll booth that would control you. But you just, give them your professional card and you're free to go. So you could drive into the big cities, you could park up where you wanted. It was very, very strange. But then on the flip side, there was a law that said you were allowed to leave your house during the day if you were walking your dog. So there suddenly became an upsurge in people wanting dogs. Yeah. So you had a lot of people ringing up because they just want to buy a dog, any old dog, and they were willing to pay for it. So, you had to, a lot of people tried to get rich quick, producing litters to demand. But, it's the serious guys said, no, if you want to get a dog that badly, go to the dog pound or something, Don't be trying to buy a professional dog with somebody's hard-earned work in it just so you can get around the lockdown clause. So from what I saw, it was a strange time. It was a very strange time. So for 2 years, there were puppy millers banging out pups to demand, any old shit. And then the professional guys were working away, and they were the ones that had a little bit of sort of morals and principles, were selectioning, filtering the phone calls that were coming through. And it was a strange time. But on a bigger scale, if you like, it made me think of, remember that old photo where you've got 3 types of Staffordshire Bull Terrier? You've got the Cradley Heath type, the Darlaston, and the Walsall, I think. You've got 3 types. It's a very old black and white photo. I'll send you it. And that showed, after the war, the types of Stafford that were bred. And it was basically because travel was restricted. So people couldn't go over, take the car and pop down the road and get a mating from someone a bit further away. So breeders tended to breed in their own pockets. There were just sort of small, sort of localized breedings, and it really had an effect on the type at the time. And it made me think of that because I had 2 or 3 calls from quite big established breeders in Italy wanting to use my stuff, and they couldn't, because Italy was a hotbed at the time of this COVID stuff. And so they couldn't leave the country. They had to use local dogs. Instead of carrying on with their breeding programs as was set out, they had to sort of turn back in on themselves and use their own stuff. So the 2 years where it was difficult, I think we might see how it's affected breedings, because the breedings that were supposed to take place never happened. So people started using their local dogs. So interesting. Like I say, for me, movement-wise, didn't restrict me at all. Again, it makes you see how, there's a global pandemic. Didn't change my life a bit. I live in the country, dogs, chickens, do what I want. And so, in fact, it didn't affect me at all. When I wanted, didn't socialize either. So my life didn't really change that much. But looking at the bigger picture, I think some of the breeding programs had to be sort of, quickly changed around. So, again, a 2-year period, I don't think you'll see that much of a dramatic effect. But it was, I know there was suddenly this supply and demand thing going on where everybody needed a dog. That way you could go out and you could walk in the park every day and all the rest of it. And then they also saw that, if you're living in an apartment and you've got 2-3 kids, most of the day you're at work and they're at school. But when you're suddenly all confined in the little apartment all together, they realised that it was too small. So there was a sudden sort of explosion of everybody buying second homes, all these little cottages in the country. So they were getting snapped up, people, Parisians and stuff, quickly buying somewhere. So if there is another lockdown, they've got somewhere to get away to. We were living in interesting times. But again, dog-wise, I don't think it would affect too much. I don't think. But what I will say is 2 years after, when it finished, obviously with this mass hysteria and the buying of pups, we're just before the elections in France, and things are very, very quiet, very quiet. I mean, if I'm selling any dogs, it's abroad, it's not in France. I mean, it seems, everybody's holding their breath to see what happens in the elections. So we shall see. We shall see. If you're being a bit philosophical about it, we're back to the same old thing. It's a reflection on society.
Yeah.
There's a lockdown, but there's a sort of loophole that if you've got a dog, you can go and walk it in the park. Let's get a dog. I mean, you can't get a sort of, more backward idea of, why you should buy a dog than that. There's a loophole. And then when COVID finishes, suddenly there's a lot of abandons have gone up,
Yeah.
So it's a throwaway society. They wanted and then they didn't. So.
Do you have any crazy stories about when you were transporting pups and dogs and stuff? What did you get harassed at all by the police?
No, because I've got a van, and it's written sort of, kennels on the van, élevage in French. And so when you go through the toll booths, they see that you're a breeder, and automatically they know that, you're allowed to circulate. They say, where are you off to? And you'd say, have you got yourself a business card or whatever? So you just show them and they say, yeah, on your way. Like I say, that was, the COVID was a strange time. But I don't know if it'll have any long-term effects. With the people that are working seriously, I don't think it'll have long-term effects, but we'll see. And I'm talking in France. The Staffordshire Bull Terrier in France, unfortunately, became the second most popular dog in France.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how many. It was just ridiculous. And I always put it into context that in 1994, I turned up in France with my Stafford. And we were 4 breeders, and there were 74 Staffords in the whole of France. This was 1994. We fast forward 25 years. It's the second most popular breed, and I think there's 500,000. And that's just declared, Stafford's non-paper, without paperwork here. There's, probably the same again. So it's exploded off the radar. But the only trouble is, one of the big problems is it's just breeding for the sake of breeding. So the quality is just been lost. Most people, there's only probably about 10% of people do the dog shows and the dog circuit. The quality you see is just utter shit. The French Kennel Club kind of lost their hands. The local club or the club that's supposed to control it, they lost control years ago. So they tried to, make the standard stricter. They're trying to drop down the height even more. They're not paying any attention to the weight clause. I mean, we talked about this in one of my other podcasts. But I mean, if you want something to be balanced, obviously the height and weight should be paid attention to. But they don't care. They want to drop the dogs down as small as possible. I mean, we're getting to Jack Russell size Staffords, and they don't care about the weight. So I mean, you can have a Jack Russell size dog weighing 25 kilos. So, and the judges like this, and I told you before, we have this system of a confirmation where at 12 months of age, you go in front of a so-called judge, and he tells you if your dog is worth breeding from or not. So some decent dogs that look athletic, a little bit up on the leg, are getting thrown out with the dishwater, and they're just keeping these sort of like Vietnamese sort of pot-belly pigs. And that's what is representing the Stafford classically in France. So things aren't good, but the only kind of saving grace was this year. I think the Stafford fell off the podium, and I think he's the fourth most popular breed now. So I think the Australian Shepherd dog is currently the number one race that's being destroyed in France. But then you've got the Belgian Shepherds, the Malinois, they're second, I think. And the shelters are full of them because people are just buying a Malinois, not realising that it's a land shark and it eats everything. So they quickly get abandoned. So all the refuges are full up with them. So, but again, it comes back to the politics again. As Don King used to say, it's bums on seats. The Kennel Club just want inscriptions and money. They'll take your money. They'll take your money. And I mean, it even looks like we saw here in, I think it was Norway the other day, banned British bulldogs.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to reproduce bulldogs in the north of Europe. And I think it's Australia and New Zealand as well that followed. And I mean, that is the alarm bell. I mean, we've talked about it for years. Even the Kennel Club years ago changed the standard because they said they'd suddenly come to a dead end. We need to backtrack. They were even considering doing outcrosses to a different breed, maybe to give it a new lease of life, the English Bulldogs. And that's just the first of a breed. I think it's going to be the domino effect because the Staffords currently in France that do the show circuit, you'd have the forefathers spinning in their graves. It's almost like a separate breed now. So it's not good news, but maybe the fact that it's peaked. I mean, remember in the 70s it was the Dobermans and the German Shepherds that suddenly became all the rage, and they destroyed the breed, and they went over to Rottweilers and Amstaffs and destroyed that. So I think it was, the fate of the Staffordshire Bull Terrier to be too popular. Now I think people have gone off that boil, and I hear Boston Terriers now are the new thing. So people are swinging over to them. So I don't know. But again, I think maybe it's the sort of, you have to be philosophical so you don't, suddenly have a nervous breakdown. But you think maybe it's a sign of the times. People today are so used to, buying from Amazon or clicking in 2 clicks, you get what you want. And I think people now, they're not into the history, the tradition, the trawling through old pedigrees, looking through dusty old books, the drawings and tables and charts and measurements. I think people can't be bothered with all that now. So in a way, a lot of the tradition is being lost, and we're in the rat race. And I think the sort of all the Staffords and the old-fashioned dogs have got caught up in that. But there are purists out there that still exist. I mean, you see lots of these pages on Facebook where it's the working dogs and people desperately fighting to keep the old stuff alive. But it really is the minority now against the majority. But like I say, the Stafford in general in France, not a good look. Was it this year or last year? I judged the Stafford Times up in Holland. That was a breath of fresh air. I mean, you've got some really very, very nice dogs up there. So that was nice to see. A few years back before the COVID, I judged the Italian show. Same thing, a lot of nice dogs down there. They're doing a good job. France, which had decent dogs years and years ago, was falling off the chart. The UK, I still see a few, but funnily enough, I'm sending a lot of dogs back to the UK at the moment. So it would seem that, the breeders from before, well, it makes sense. The old breeders that I used to look up to, they're falling off their perches one after another, and there's nobody behind them to replace them. So you've really got to look or know the right people to talk to get a decent Stafford now. So, and it's a shame, but maybe it's just, it suddenly became hugely fashionable, and now it's going off the boil again. And maybe with enough, dyed-in-the-wool fanciers, we can get it back to where it once was. I mean, I know that I'll always be doing the dogs that I like. And I work, luckily, I've got about half a dozen sort of people spread out that I work with that think along the same lines. So that's my aim, is to keep it going as long as possible. But it's, I wouldn't say you're under attack, but you are in the very slim majority now, minority rather. And the majority are these sort of caricature, sort of weird looking dogs. I was talking to an old judge the other day that said sometimes I have to double check that I haven't mistaken the ring that I'm in, because I think that I'm in the French Bulldog ring. So when they say that, you think, wow, how can you mistake a Stafford for a French Bulldog? But there we are. We've managed. I mean, as I said, the figures of, in France, there are supposedly 7,000 breeders, and only 1,000 of them have a kennel name.
Right.
So that shows the seriousness of it. You would think that would ring alarm bells with the official club. I don't know how they would do it, or what could they do with open days or conferences, or what they could do to promote the breed in the right way. But they lost their hand years and years ago. I mean, it was a bunch of inexperienced people tried to put together a club to just have a sort of old boys club together, and they lost the hand immediately, and suddenly it was just the Stafford rolled out of control. It became more and more popular. Anybody was breeding anything with everything, and now at the state of it, I mean, it got to the point of, I think the Kennel Club turned a blind eye because they were just raking in the money. I mean, with so many registrations, so many litters on the ground, they were just pulling in the money. So they turned their backs, close their eyes, they pretend they haven't seen anything, and they wait for the storm to pass, and they just count their money, And again, the only casualties is unfortunately the dogs. And the 6,000 or so-called opportunist breeders that are just pumping these dogs out, when they've suddenly got litters that they can't sell, they just change the breed. The fact that they haven't got a kennel name doesn't make any difference. They know that they weren't in it for being serious or giving anything back to the breed or respecting the breed or trying to carry something on. They were just there purely for the pound notes. Cash it in, and the minute that fad passes, we'll go on to the next thing. So maybe they'll go over to, Boston Terriers now. But like I say, the Stafford was a victim of its own success because it's a good little dog. It's hardy. It's keys in the hands. Basically everybody can deal with this little dog. And then, the prices were high compared to other countries. So everybody had a good time, and now I think we're starting to pick up the pieces. But it's interesting because a lot of the people that were very vocal about, protecting the breed and stuff, they were, very, very in the sort of churning out puppies and cashing it in as well. So it's, I don't know, it's just maybe human nature. You could be disappointed, but I always say that at your own little level, you can't change, you can't change the world. You just have to do what you do in your little corner and plod on. And, when the storm passes, hopefully it leaves a lot of devastation in its wake. And then the decent, the real people that were there from the beginning, they can rebuild. And like I say, all the opportunists will go on to another breed now. So it hasn't been a good time for the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, put it that way. It's not a positive time.
How has it affected, we know what it's affected with the health and the looks of the dogs, but how has it affected the temperament?
Well, funnily enough, when I was in Italy, there were a few man biters. That started creeping in to the breed. There was particular lines that had dogs that were too excitable, and they tended to be very terrier-like and would try and take the ends of your fingers off. And then when I was in Holland this year, you had a lot of shy dogs, which was strange. I mean, when I did my compte rendu, my notes for how I found the weekend, I actually wrote a big piece about that, about the Staffordshire Bull Terrier is bold and fearless and reliable. It's just the first words in the standard. And I came across a lot of very shy dogs. When you're the judge, obviously you come down. A normal Stafford will be how's it going, and wants to say hello to you and jumps on your leg, and can be even too exuberant, can be too over the top. But a lot of dogs, you're bending down to put your hands to them, and they were shying away, which is not typical of the temperament. So it was interesting to see that in different countries and spread out, people aren't doing the selection and looking at all of the points. That maybe they're selecting for looks, or maybe they're selecting for physical ability or working ability, but they're not looking to tick all the boxes. And it was strange. I found that shy Staffords very, very rare. You'd never see them. Staffords were always over the top, and you're always literally have to take your slipper off in the house and belt it around their head for to calm them down. But there were a lot of shy ones, which I thought was strange. So you got shy to one end of the scale, which can actually be fear biters afterwards. If the dog's too shy, and you sort of keep pushing forward, what's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? It can spending its teeth to keep you back. So you've got at one end of the scale, you've got man biters, and the other end you've got fear biters. So it's that was one of the notes I had. But to be honest, with the French standard of Staffords, I don't really get involved. I might see some groups of people walking their dogs and stuff, bits and pieces. It's the same thing. Very often you see on Facebook, they go out in groups to walk their dogs, and they're all off the leads. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, a real Stafford you can't have off the lead around other dogs, just doesn't work. But so they've obviously, there's in the selection, people not paying attention to any characters. You've got sort of now, male Staffords of a certain age running around playing together, which is not typical either. So I don't know. I think a lot of damage has been done because they've just closed their eyes with selection and just knocked out pups just for the money. But like I say, we had the blue as well, the blue colours. We got Merle has crept into the breed now. You can see litters of Merle Staffordshire Bull Terriers being advertised. What else? We haven't yet got the long-haired Staffordshire Bull Terriers being bred. I know you see that in the Bulldogs. You've got long-haired Bulldogs now. No, I think they've done quite enough, to be honest, to sort of ruin the breed. And I think now they've decided, well, they're not selling as well as they used to. Time to move on. But not just the Staffords. I mean, being a Patterdale man as well, I've noticed that suddenly the Patterdale's taken off. And everybody's getting Patterdales and just breeding them without working them. And they'll just write in their newspaper ads, grandparents were workers. and people are buying them. Oh, Patterdale, what's that? Yeah, okay, we'll buy them. So, don't know. It's very strange. Very strange, people, you know. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, when we look at the bulldog, the history of the bulldog, it was exactly that. I mean, the old bulldog, the bulldog before, you know, would bite his owner like it would bite anybody else. So they put, you know, pug blood into the dogs to dampen down that shitty character to make them more marketable. So, in fact, we've always been reinventing the wheel. You know, when dogs are too troublesome, you can't sell them. So they want something for the pet market because that's just what brings them the big money in, you know. It's like Labradors was a classic example. I mean, a decent working Labrador now is you know, as rare as hen's teeth. Just can't find them. But they mass produce Labradors that are very peculiar man-biters, Labradors. People don't realize this, but it's one of the dogs that bites the most. But they managed to market it as these sort of cuddly, you know, what was it? It was the toilet paper ads in the Dulux, or what do they call it? There was a toilet paper in England, and they were Labrador puppies playing with the toilet rolls. And boom, suddenly everybody wanted a Labrador, you know. And I think, didn't George Bush have a Labrador as well, walking around the White House?
Yeah, I'm sure he did, yeah.
There you go. So Labradors became the dog, but I mean, you know, they used to bite a lot of people as well. But Labradors used to get, you know, second and third chances. You know, if they bit somebody, the vet would go, no, we're not going to put him down. Surely there was more to it than that. But, you know, a Stafford or a Pit Bull might nip somebody once and that's it. Game over. So I don't know. I think you can be a sort of victim of your own success. Yeah. And it was since the last time we spoke, it's been the case with Staffords. It suddenly exploded. I think we're on the downside now, but you know they've you know, basically they've destroyed the breed. I've seen the people who were head of the club here have all sort of resigned and, you know, gone about their business. They're doing other things now. So it's, you know, nobody takes responsibility, you know. As soon as it turns to shit, they resign. And it's not my fault, not my problem. No. So always the way, you know, the things that suffer are the dogs and the breed and all the rest of it. But if you got enough purists working away behind the scenes, not getting involved, I think, you know, you can always save things. But it's been a particularly tough time since we last spoke for Staffords. You know. But again, all of the breeds go through it at one time or another, and I think it was just the time for Staffords now. But again, all hope is not lost. I know a fair amount of dyed-in-the-wool people that are carrying on the good work. So we'll see in the next few years. You know, maybe all the crappy hyper-type sort of dogs will be dying away, and it will just leave, you know, a new wave of original dogs. But again, we'll have to see what breed is going to be next victim of human connery, as the French would say.
As long as,
but again, that comes back to people doing their homework.
Yeah.
Again, we always say that. Yeah. And today's, you know, sort of, you know, rush around society, nobody can be bothered to do their homework. Very few people. It really is becoming complicated. I mean, every now and again I get somebody rings me up and they've done their homework, and it's like, you know, a pleasant surprise. You're like, wow, you know, good for you, well done. You know, it's you know, makes a change to have somebody ringing up talking about the old lines, talking about this and that, dropping decent kennel names, and you're like, wow, you know, especially in France. You're like, you know, you really have done your homework. You know, I think you've come to the right place right now. Let's talk. So then we're off. Then it's good. You're sharing a passion. But the thing is, today people just want. Nobody's willing to wait. No. For example, for the right dog, you should be willing to wait. If you ring up a breeder now and he says, "Listen, I haven't got anything for you for the minute, but if you want to put your name down on a list, I might have something in 6 months." Nobody's willing to wait. The people that do wait, very often, they'll have a litter in 6 months and they'll ring back and say, well, listen, I might have something decent here. What do you think? Oh, no, I've already bought something. So now the people are forced to say, well, listen, if you want to be on my waiting list, I want, you to give an account of, a certain amount of money to make sure you're serious. Mm-hmm. And again, most people, no, well, I'm not sure. I'll ring you back. So people aren't ready to, I remember when I was a lad, a Staffordshire Bull Terrier litter was sold before it was born. I mean, that's how quick you had to get in. You could say, well, listen, I want a male, but if there isn't any, I'll take a female. That's it. You didn't get into conversation about what colour coat it's got, what. You didn't have any of that. It's, my bitch has, been put to so-and-so's male. Oh, yeah, I know him. I'm going to take 5 reservations because that's, an average litter, and that's it. And so 5 people will put the money on the table, and that's it. Before they've even been born, the litter's sold. So, I'm not old, but I can remember when Staffordshire Bull Terrier litters didn't even make the papers. They didn't make the free ads. They were already spoken for. Nowadays, it's not like that. I mean, everybody's, putting dozens of litters on in the free ads, like the Craigslist or whatever, and pumping them out. And, they'll even exchange it for something else. Listen, I want a moped for my daughter, so I'll exchange a pup against a moped. And so it's, it's the world's gone crazy. So when you've got a sort of supply and demand like that, how can you really expect people to be serious and start asking in-depth questions like, this is how I live. I live, for example, in a rural area. I would like my dog to, maybe during the day he's going to be guarding, around the farm. I need him to maybe be dispatching some rats. I need, the weekend I want to have a bit of fun with my friends, doing a bit of rabbiting. This is the type of dog I want. Nobody will say that anymore. I mean, you'll get guys ringing you up saying, yeah, okay, I want a dog for sport. You say, okay. Yeah, because I'm a big sportive guy and I'm out on my mountain bike every day and running up hills and stuff. And you go, yeah, all right. But people forget Facebook is available to everybody. And if you just click on the guy's profile, you'll see him on his sofa eating chips in front of the television, Yeah. So you think, come on, guys, at least be reasonable. If you want a really sporting dog and you prove you do this, that, and the other, then great. But most people think, and the classic is, I want a dog with character, big character. No, you don't. Do you realize what a dog with big character entails? You walk in at 5 a.m. or midnight so you don't cross other dogs. Your dog doesn't lead a happy life because all he wants to do is fight. You've got to be careful if you've got friends coming over and they might have a dog. You're going to go on holiday. Who are you going to leave your dog with? No, you don't. You don't want a big character dog. Are you really sure you want that? Yeah. So, it's, you're having to guide people and hold their hands. And, anybody that rings me knows that they're in for, a good conversation for, I'm going to be asking questions and this and that, and I'm going to see if I've got anything for you, if something corresponds. And even there, where I kind of select the owners to the pups, even then I can make mistakes, But the sort of filtering process, I turn lots of people away. But again, there are many people that won't. If you've got the money, you can have a dog. So we're into this vicious circle, and I don't think the Staffordshire Bull Terrier is exclusive. I think it's all breeds, I think anybody that breeds good dogs is going to run into these problems. Supply and demand. People want what they think that they want. They can't be bothered to do, or they might look up on Google quickly, working boar bull. Oh, that looks nice. I want one of them. But they don't realize this thing's going to grow up to be 80 kilos and it's going to eat more than they do, And they're like, geez, do you know how much, my dog eats? So it's I think, as we said before, it's just the sign of the times. It's interesting, an interesting phenomenon to see how, humans decide what they want and, it kind of follows fashion. after the film Jock of the Bushveld, everybody wanted Red Staffordshire Bull Terriers. Years ago, the publicity for the toilet paper, everybody wanted Labradors. Fucking the Disney thing with 100 and thing Dalmatians, everybody wanted Dalmatians. Funny how you can sell things to people, you know, the sort of consumerism. But funny. But then again, you know, you've still got purists that exist, and if you really want, you know, somewhere to go, and you really scratch it, you know, you'll have names come up. This is the good thing. I mean, we did the podcasts 2-3 years back, and I didn't even know there would be comments on the podcast. I was driving back from, I was delivering the pup somewhere, and I clicked on a link, and it was one of my old podcasts with you, and there was loads of commentaries behind. And I thought, I didn't even know people could comment on the things. And it's interesting how far and wide these things go. I mean, you know, I got people from Australia and New Zealand sending me messages and stuff, and it's good. So in a way, you're getting the message out there, you know. You know, you're giving a platform for passionate breeders to speak on. And then after, it's up to the person if they want to listen all the way through, or if they just want to click on and listen to a bit. But you know, we got a tractor coming by, that's why you can hear the dogs barking. This is part of living in the country. It comes up the bumpy lane, the tractor, and that sets all the dogs off. So. What do you want? We don't get any visitors, but, you know, the tractor, he's got to do his work. So that sets off all the dogs. Anyway, see if you can filter that bit out. Anyway.
No, that's good. If it's a dog podcast and you don't hear dogs, we got problems.
Yeah, you can hear a choir of them there, because the tractor guy likes to wind them up. He drives by and he stops. We've got 2 Malinois that guard the front of the house. And he thinks it's funny to stop the tractor and look at the dogs getting wound up. Yeah, you don't realise all the other dogs are singing behind, but, you know, he thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
Whatever. The future plans is basically just, I've always said that breeding dogs is a marathon. It's not a sprint, so It's just plodding on. Just producing some nice stuff and keep going and helping the people, kind of in a sort of mentoring type way, helping, you know, a few people with the right mentality, starting up their own little programs and trying to sort of, you know, just talk common sense into people. So.
Joseph, ooh, so I must be Mary.